Good evening. I'd like to thank everybody on behalf of the South Central Indiana League of Women Voters for coming tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started. If I could have the mayoral candidates come up front and have a seat.
Just out here listening. You guys can
All right, thanks everybody for coming out and taking part. One of the things that we promote with the league is involvement and education about candidates. So you guys being here and being part of the process is wonderful to see. What we're going to do tonight is we're going to start with mayoral candidates, and they'll have 3 to 5 minutes to introduce themselves. And then Barb Anderson, our league president, will ask questions that have been asked by the audience. And from there, we'll move on and cycle through candidates going down the ballot, starting with at-large. So if you're a candidate and you have your sign, bring it with you, and please come up and have a seat when you're called. And I'll turn it over to Barb to say a few words.
Hi. We want to do a little housekeeping before we start the process tonight. Thanks, everybody, for being here. It's wonderful to see a crowd. And if we need to get more chairs, I think we could probably ask somebody to start doing that process. It looks like we might be out of seats, which is a good thing. Our emphasis on doing this is bringing government to the people. And we want you to understand that we think the most important input that can be had from the people who elect you. So in that, we're doing a series of these. We kicked it off in Charleston 3.5 weeks ago. Today is this, and you guys should give yourselves a hand of applause. We've had more elected officials in Floyd County participate so far than any other community. So give yourselves a hand. It says a lot because it says that you care about what the people you represent think. So with that, we're going to get started and get down to business. We'll begin. Well, which one of you gentlemen would like to go first? Should we go left to right?
The way I understood, you said it was going to be in the order of the ballot.
Oh, how is it on? Okay, good. Mark Seabrook, we're starting to the right.
You want us to stand?
Pardon?
Would you like for us to stand or sit?
Whichever you're more comfortable with. So the microphones are right there, so if you want to stand up, you're more than welcome. If you're more comfortable sitting, you're more than welcome as well.
Leave you know one. Thank you for coming. Yes, you start. Hi, thanks for coming this evening. If it's too loud, tell me. I'm Mark Seabrook, and I'm running for mayor of the city of New Albany. My family came from Monmouth, New Jersey, and bought ground from distributors and settled here in 1814. They built steamboats and worked on the river, and in 1920, they opened up a family service establishment, and this year that will be 100 years old. It's still operating. I retired after 48 years of service, and my great-grandfather, my granddad, my dad, and myself have all been there, and I learned 2 major things working there. Number 1, you need to care about other people. And number 2, you need to listen. And both of those things come naturally to me. I'm a good listener. I talk a lot too, but anyhow, and I do care about people. And I've seen people in their darkest hour. What you need to know about me is I'm not an I person, I'm a we person, a team person, and you're not going to hear I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. Our Seabrook team needs to care about others. We need to listen, and those things come natural to me. And as I've traveled through the city of New Albany, walking and talking to citizens, they all want to know how their money's spent, how the decisions are made to spend it, and is it being spent wisely. And they want to be involved, whether it be meetings like this, or going to council meetings, or whatever, they do want to be involved. We want to make every neighborhood a great, great neighborhood. We want them safer and more livable, and we want to do that because neighborhoods are the foundation of the city. That's where we all live. That's where we eat our meals, our kids get ready for school, and it's their safe haven. We will be clear about investments in infrastructure, no surprise, and do it right the first time. We value your money and spend it smarter. We will make communicating with city government more efficient and much easier to do. We will be open and transparent about city finances. You'll know where the money comes from and where it goes and how that decision was made. We will spend tax dollars smarter. We will make New Albany an inclusive and welcoming city. We all enjoy this city, we live here together, and it's a good place to live. And I thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Seabrook. Our next speaker will be Mayor Jeff Gahan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mayor Jeff Gahan. I've been the mayor for the last almost 8 years now. And I can tell you, it's been a wonderful experience for me, and I think quite a few people who live in New Albany. We've really put a lot of effort into bringing a lot of improvements to the city, across neighborhoods, across the downtown, and into the families. We've spent a lot of effort and time improving infrastructure, and I'll just kind of I'll just go down the list because we've really done a whole lot of things for a whole lot of folks. We drastically improved our flood protection with brand new pumps. Right now we're putting backup electric power so we never have to worry about flood. We've improved the police department, invested heavily in their fleet and all the equipment they need to make us safe. Fire department, when we first got here there wasn't even a fire tower. It was out of service, we brought it back. Road repair and road construction, just tons and tons of road construction because they've been neglected for many, many years. Wastewater utility, it's pretty tough. If you live in a neighborhood and you have wastewater that runs down the middle of your street when it rains. We got rid of 70 overflows since we've been here. So we've done a whole lot of work in the neighborhoods, lots of sidewalk works, lots of park improvements. We're standing right here in a wonderful facility that would not have been possible unless we had a lot of people working to get this done. This is just one of several of the park facilities that we've improved, including the swimming pool and the soccer fields and the greenway. We've also made great efforts in historic preservation. We've brought the Rice building back to life. We did the KSC building. We're also working on the downtown city hall. Lots of money and effort are going into these reconstruction projects because the city's 200 years old. It's a pretty old city and went through a long period of neglect. We've also been very good with everyone's money, and I'll brag a little bit about that, but it's important that you know this because we've done a whole lot of things, but what you really need to know is this is our 7th year in a row with a balanced budget. We've worked very closely with the New Albany City Council to put forward a budget that we all can live with, and we balance it every time. I don't believe that's ever happened. We have an A+ financial rating, something every citizen in New Albany can be very proud of. I know I'm proud of that, proud of the staff, proud of all the directors that work very hard to watch the numbers. Also, I have with me tonight our audit, which is an outstanding audit. According to the State Board of Accounts, it's probably the finest audit out of any second-class city in the state of Indiana. So we ought to applaud that right now, because that's outstanding. could continue to talk about some of the things that we've done, and I'll continue to do that. But moving forward, we have a fantastic future ahead of the citizens of New Albany. We've been here for almost 8 years, and I could not be more excited about the future of New Albany. I'm looking forward to November. Thank you.
And Mr. Dan Coffey is the independent candidate for mayor and our next speaker.
Good evening. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy that you're here. Most of you know I was a Democrat for about 40 years. And over the years, I have sat there and watched the Democrats, along with the Republicans, focus on buildings or bringing in businesses, which are good things. But we have continually left so many people behind. And I'm going to give you a perfect example. You know, when you talk about the homeless situation, you know, people are like, well, this is going to cost a lot of money. What can we do here? You know, they're out of sight, out of mind, scooting down the road, whatever. You know, we have a housing authority. With a housing authority, you have units. Okay, there's no reason. Back when I was on the housing authority, from 92 to 2000, then I got on the city council, then I had to step down. Do you know that we kept the percentage of our units open? That way, if there was a fire or someone were to come in or whatever and they had no place to live, we had it. If they were homeless, you know, we had it. And HUD we had the highest rental rate in the state. We were at 92%, and we were still giving places for people to live till they got on their feet. You know, yeah, I'd like to talk about the infrastructure, things like that. I will tell you one of the ways that we're going to have an open government is 20 years ago, the city used to have their Board of Works meetings around the city at different schools, at different churches. That quit because the people came and they had real hard questions. Okay, we had to answer them. Politicians don't like to answer real hard questions. I'm just being honest with you. Another thing as far as, making our city better, I think we need to go back to the police beats where they're in the neighborhoods. There's no reason, we're such a small city, there's no reason at all why they can't get from one side to the other if it's necessary. If we have to hire more police to do it, then let's do it. Because the bottom line, one of the biggest problems that we have in this community, in this country, that no one is addressing, at least the government itself, the people that speak for the government, is the drug problems that we have. And they're horrendous. That is why you have so many homeless. Now I ask you, okay, we put them up. Let's put them in an apartment somewhere. What does that solve? Nothing. Can you tell me any place at all in this community where someone that wants to get off, can get help to get off? I can tell you one, it's the church down here on Ben Sands. But then something else that really bothered me, I had a speech made a typical, rah-rah speech, and let's get this done. But then, who's going to be speaking for the average person out here? And I was talking with, I'll go ahead and use your name, Barb, the other day. She was upset. She didn't know how upset I was. I don't know if you know the shelter for the battered women has closed. Okay, these are mothers with children. They closed it. Their answer is to send these women with their children across the river or to Jeff to a homeless shelter that they cannot take. These are people in our community as well. What are we doing for them? You know, it's nice to have big, beautiful buildings. And I'll be honest with you, I get fried because we spend millions and millions of dollars on buildings downtown. And once we get it done, we don't own it. Another organization owns it. They get the money, but you paid for it. Are you getting the best bang for your buck there? The real building blocks in any community is its people. It's not a building. And we are falling well short in our duties to perform in that area. Thank you.
We have a series of questions, and none of them have names on them, so I'm assuming that the questions were to go to each of you. And we'll give each of you 1 minute to 3 minutes to answer. So the first question is, and I guess we'll start with you again, Mr. Seabrook, and then we'll start with Mayor Gahan, and then we'll start with Dan and kind of rotate it through. Mr. Seabrook, can you talk about the process of and all of the nice thing here is that all three of you have served an elected office very recently. So you can answer some of these questions just from your own experience. Can you talk about the process of the Sherman-Minton Bridge closure and what steps you take to help local businesses and the everyday commuter deal with it?
Well, first of all, yeah, you're right. We need to be involved and talk about it. I was involved as the county commissioner when the first closure came down because of the danger on it. And there was a big meeting in Louisville at a communication center. And when push comes to shove, NDOT makes that decision. That will not be our decision. Now, we can do input, and we had if you will, a meeting or a presentation where we could go out to Scribner, I believe it was, and our County Bay Club this time, and talk to the engineers. And there were 5 or 6 options, and kind of weigh in on them. And I just think the thing to do is keep in constant contact with them, and look at the impact it's going to do. Talk to some of the business owners and see if they got some suggestions. One of the miracles that they pulled off when they started building the bridges was some guy had enough sense that if you know what the rumble strips on the side of the road are, where if you get over there you can hear it roar, well, they paved those over and got another whole lane of traffic by doing that. So just little things like that make a big difference. And that's just talking to each other and listening to each other. And I remember being over in the room at that communication center, and there were Clarksville officials, Jeffersonville officials, Clark County, Floyd County, City of New Albany. We were all there. And it needs to be a combined effort, not just one city by itself.
Thank you. Mayor Gahan?
You asked to describe the process. Could you repeat the question to make sure I heard it right?
Sure. Can you talk about the process of the Sherman-Minton Bridge closure and what steps would you take to help local businesses and the everyday commuter deal with it?
Sure. Okay. I didn't hear the second part of it. You said local businesses. Yes, and that's very important. We have a little experience with our bridge shutting down, of course, and so we were very much involved with that. And it has the potential to really, really damage a lot of incomes, especially working people. Right now, a lot of people travel back and forth across the Sherman-Minton Bridge to work, and now if you have to be rerouted, you're adding a considerable expense, especially if you add the tolls to your average working guy. Okay. Also, the downtown businesses, they're all independent. So just a little bit of disturbance in their cash flow can really set them on their ear, right? That's just the nature of it. So we've worked very hard to build infrastructure to attract new businesses. The last thing we want to do is just sit back and let the state decide what the heck's going to do with our downtown. We're not in that mode. City Council stepped up at the last meeting. They moved forward with a resolution to, hey, let's not shut the bridge down. Let's keep it open, right? Hats off to the City Council. It was 9-0. They did a great job with that. But I think there's still a card left to play, and when the time is right, I think we're going to. We're gonna huddle. We're gonna see exactly what the time frame is on the construction. And when they give us the final number, we're gonna huddle. We're gonna see if there's any incentive. The City of New Albany, the Chamber of Commerce, the Horseshoe Foundation can come forward to shorten that time. We've got to do everything we can do to minimize the closure time, because it will be a very, very tough situation for the City of New Albany in general, whether you live in the suburbs or whether you live downtown. It's a very tough situation, and we're really serious about it. Working with our economic development director and the city council, we plan on rolling out a program of incentives to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward, and the state knows that we mean business, that we don't want to sit back on our heels and let them dictate how the future of New Albany is going to be, especially in the next few years. It's very important. I hope everybody's following it. There will be another public hearing, and I hope to have more and more people turn out and express their concerns.
Thank you. Mr. Coffey.
You know, it's interesting. It was brought up at the city council. It was a resolution. But let me tell you what the resolution didn't touch. Yes, it did touch the businesses downtown, and that's important. And I understand that. But what it didn't touch, and at least I know it's now getting talked about, what about the working mother out there that now has to drive an extra hour to 2 hours a day, now has to spend, $800 to $1,000 a month to go back and forth to work that she hadn't counted on out there? Or, you know, a family as a whole. You know, they're both working. Now they've got to spend that much more money. But then what happens with the child care? You know, that's as important as the businesses downtown. I'm sorry, it is, because it's going to affect far more people out in this community. And the mayor's right. Right now, there's not a whole lot we can do about it because we don't know what it's going to entail. But I would challenge the city council, which I sat on, and I said, let's call the governor down here. Why shouldn't the governor be here representing us as well? He's the top dog. Tell us, what you think can be done, because he can make the changes. But whatever we do, we have to make sure that roughly 70% of our working population is not going to be shortchanged in their pocketbooks toward, they'll have to cut something. That's the bottom line. They have to cut something. We got the people looking out for the businesses downtown. How about the working mother, the working parents, those kids? What are they going to do about their daycare? Because it's not going to be 8 to 4 now. Now it's going to be 7 to 5 or 6 to 6. What's going to happen with them kids there? How are the parents going to make up that difference in income that they're losing? Let's be fair for everybody.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mayor Gahan, what have you done throughout your time as an elected official to create or attract well-paying jobs for New Albany citizens?
Okay, I have some numbers I can share with you. Since I've taken office, we have landed quite a few jobs here in New Albany, and it doesn't get much press. But we've landed 850 jobs since we've taken office, $36 million in added payroll, and $161 million in capital improvement. Okay? And those aren't my numbers. Those are numbers from the Chamber of Commerce. Okay, so, how does that work? No one's going to relocate to a city that has poor infrastructure. It's not going to happen. They don't want to come here. If your schools are dilapidated and beat up, they're not coming. If your sewers don't function, they don't want anything to do with that either. So from the very get-go, we've really concentrated on improving infrastructure and improving the quality of life for every citizen so people want to come here. And we've done that through parks, we've done it through roads, we've done it through wastewater utility, and we've really tried to make the neighborhoods wonderful, not just okay, because we want people to come here. So it's a different world now. People can live anywhere they want, so they come to the community they want to be, and generally the jobs will follow them. That's what's happening. Jobs are coming here because people like to be here. So it's kind of upside down for where it was in the past. People used to relocate to the job. We have jobs coming here now, and it's largely because we made some huge investments in our infrastructure, and we made it a great place to live.
And Mr. Coffey.
To be honest here, I'm on the city council. The most we can do is we can, float bonds or do bond issues. We have to take our lead from the mayor. So I can't stand here and say, look, this is what I did or what we did, because in all fairness, it was the mayor and his economic redevelopment staff. I've sat on both boards, but we have to follow his lead. So, and I'm not going to complain about what he's done. So, thank you.
Mr. Seabrook?
Yes, I feel like one of the things I have is that
Could you pick up your mic, please? Thanks.
I feel like one of the things that I have that's in my favor about a lot of things is I've worked in both county and city government, and it's true that you have to make a city or county inviting for people to come in. It can't look like shambles or one thing or another, but there's a fine balance in all of that about who suffers or who doesn't suffer when you do that. Increasing jobs is good for anybody. Increasing tax revenue is good for anybody. But at some point, you also have to evaluate the quality of life, which was discussed here just a minute ago, and what those expenses are, and what really the financial status is about how long can we sustain that. So I welcome anybody in New Albany. My people came from Monmouth, New Jersey down here, and two of them went back. It's too rough back then. But anyhow, I grew up here. I grew up when this was Hoosier Panel, and this is a much nicer facility and better to use than Hoosier Panel. But somebody's got to pay for it, and I just think there's a moderation of those things that we need to look at and see what's really true, what's good for everybody, and let them have a say in it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Mr. Coffey, you'll start with this question. How do projects funded by TIF revenues directly or indirectly impact schools and public safety?
They can impact the schools in that does take tax revenue out of these areas. However, if you look, it just wasn't too long ago, they just did a big bond issue and a tax rate. So, they got that money back. I will tell you that there's no way that we're going to improve infrastructure, especially in our industrial parks and to bring businesses in, if you don't have the TIF. Now, thankfully, they have loosened some of the regulations on the TIF that allows us to use them in the neighborhoods. So let's say we need to do something out the short section of Grantline Road before you hit 8th Street. Okay, we can use TIF in that situation, the Walmart TIF, because it's a corridor to the Walmart. So that allows us to do that. Actually, honestly, I think the TIFs have been used well, because if we didn't have the TIFs, we wouldn't be here right now. This wouldn't be here right now. What was the tower that we have? It's questionable whether that would be here now. It was a tool that the state allowed us to use, and others are using it. Now, they are closing it up. But most of your parks, we wouldn't have what we have here now if it wasn't for a TIF. So in some ways, maybe it's a trade-off in some areas, but it is a benefit in others. And you have to make that decision yourself, whether you think it was worth it or not, or whether we made the right decision. Thank you.
Mr. Seabrook?
Thank you. When I was on the city council, there were TIF districts in. Nobody really paid much attention to them. They didn't pay much attention to how much money was in them, and one thing or another, because a lot of people didn't know much about them. Well, originally, TIF districts were made, just like you say, a TIF district. The money that was collected and held back in a TIF district was to be used in that district and not all over the city. It was not a, if you will, a fund you could just reach in and grab it and say, well, we're going to build a park over here, do this over here. And then what happens if there's infrastructure or something in that district, TIF money's gone or committed to something else. Now, the legislature, unless Mr. Clear may correct me on this, but they loosened up the rules on TIF. It used to be some very restricted things what you could do with TIF money. And when the TIF money got loosened like that, it was like somebody opened the floodgates. Everybody got into it for whatever they wanted to use it for. And I think they've been abused. I think they've been overspent. And I think there's going to be a day of reckoning on that. So that's what I can say about TIFs. Thank you.
And Mayhem.
Okay, one more for the audience. Can you repeat your question?
Okay, sure.
Kind of got off track there. So. While you're doing that, I'll just say, no, the TIFs have not been overspent. And, you're one to be talking about overspending. You've overspent your budget 4 years in a row. You have. I haven't. You have.
And the question is, how do projects funded by TIF revenues directly or indirectly impact schools and public safety?
Okay, they directly impact the schools and public safety. The TIFs are used to support sidewalks and road construction and everything that makes a city, and the city infrastructure supports schools. That's why we were one of the first ones, if not the only folks, city council and myself, supported the referendum right out of the chute. We know that schools are economic drivers, and the fact that we've invested in our infrastructure, and the schools did the same thing with these wonderful schools, and everybody over the state is trying to do the same thing, but they can't get it done, but we did here. Every dollar we spend out of TIF directly impacts safety in the schools in a good way.
Great. In the next 4 years, our city will need a leader who can address an opioid crisis on a local level. How do you plan to work with families who need your help, Mr. Seabrook?
Well, I think you said the magic word, is help. A lot of people, they have addictions, whether it's opioids or heroin or whatever it is, and it all goes back a little bit, not a little bit, a lot, to there's not really a safety net in any of the three cities to catch those that, are homeless, helpless, addicted. Some of those things go together. If they're homeless, they're looking for money to take care of their habit. Not all. Some of them just have a bad situation. And, one of the things I wanted to do, or would do, is, first of all, I think there's a short-term thing we need to look at and a long-term. Long-term, I think there needs to be a committee made up of law enforcement, city officials, and clergy, and volunteer groups that all want to help. I mean, the churches have all gone together and do meals at the churches every day of the week covered for people that are homeless and don't have any food. And I think that the new deal with the police department is, yeah, we need enforcement, but we also need mental health facilities. A lot of people can't get off of drugs on their own. They are going to need help, and I think help's the magic word. And I think the schools do an excellent job of monitoring it in the buildings and one thing or another, but once those kids go home, they're surrounded by environments sometimes that just aren't good. So I think that we need to be very progressive and step forward and admit we got a problem and work with leaders like the Salvation Army, Red Cross, church groups to take care of the homeless. So if you fix part of that, the rest of it can get better. Thank you.
Mr. Gahan? How, in the next 4 years, our city will need a leader who can address an opioid crisis on a local level. How do you plan to work with families who need your help?
Okay, that is a great question. I don't know who put that out here, but it really is a great question. It's something that, if you're not aware of it, everyone needs to know. At the end of last month, the Washington Post released a study, and it said Floyd County, Indiana, had 47 million opioid pills released into the county. 47 million. It's about 91 pills per person. I mean, that's staggering. So Floyd County lit up nationwide. and we can reference the study. It's really a wonderful study. Everybody should read that. It's a very difficult problem because that's a drug that doctors give you a prescription for a lot of times. And so you have a lot of these pills out in circulation. So, how do we move forward with that? Just here recently, we had a meeting with the folks at Walgreens. We had a meeting with our health coordinator, our health director here in Floyd County. And we kind of huddled to try to scratch our heads exactly what we can do. And a lot of it's public awareness. If you have some drugs in your house and you don't need them, you need to make sure you take the proper steps to discard them. You may want to just maybe ask the question to the doctor, do I need this many? Maybe ask that question. It's not an easy one, but this is really important. The city of New Albany in 2017, city of New Albany stepped up and did that, 2017. Now you might have followed the story in Oklahoma, they won, and so there's going to be some help. I can tell you, Floyd County as a whole did not take that step. We did, and we're waiting the results. But the bottom line is it's going to take a whole lot of effort from a lot of people, the medical community, the drug distributors, the drug retailers, and mostly city officials, and getting people help that are on these narcotics and identifying them and seeing what we can do to help. But it's a big piece of it is public awareness, and you'll see very soon some of the steps that we've taken in addition to entering the lawsuit. You'll be seeing some of those steps that we're taking to combat opioids in New Albany and Floyd County.
And Mr. Coffey.
That's a really tough question. It's something that I have thought over about, I'm going to say, last 5 or 6 years. For those of you that don't know, the success rate of coming off heroin doesn't come until after the 10th time they have tried to get off. 10 times. These are designer drugs. They're not like the stuff back when I was a kid, that you take it once, you're hooked. Totally hooked. I don't know the answer. I will tell you that, number one, for me, because I do like to get out into the community. I like to know what's going on. First off, we have to acknowledge that we have a problem. We have to know it. We cannot sit there and, act like it's not there. We're losing too many people. And the sad fact is we're losing our children, not to the drugs, but to the results of the drugs in their family. One, we have to have an education in the schools dealing with drugs. I don't know if y'all remember, I'm 62 going on 63. During the Vietnam War, we had a really hard time, and guess what it was with? Heroin. This country was getting overrun with heroin. And they had a nationwide program, education, where you flip on the TV. I know some of y'all have seen it. You had a skillet there on the stove. This is an egg. And then they sit there and slam it in the skillet, start frying. They said, no, that's eggs on heroin. Or your brain on heroin, I'm sorry. But it sounds corny, but you've seen a whole generation turn away from it. We're going to have to really dig deep, because the fact of the matter is, if you want people off of this, you're going to have some place for them to go. They're not going to take them at the hospitals. You go to some of these organizations or whatever that deal with this, and 30 days, boom, you're gone. Your insurance runs out, boom, you're gone. Now, I will tell you this much. I do know of a church where both the husband and wife are ministers. Both of them are recovered heroin addicts. And both of them help others. And I learned that through one of the detectives on the police department. He cares. He takes them to these people. And Barb, there's one thing I got to bring up that the three of us didn't bring up about the TIF areas. and this is so you all understand. The state made a mistake, okay? Let's say this is New Albany, this is a TIF area right here. Now, whatever taxes are being paid at that time for property taxes, the state still gets this. But because it's a TIF area and we provide incentives, this one builds here, this one builds here, and this one builds here. Guess what? The state gets that tax. We get this. So they are beneficial. Don't let anybody tell you they're not beneficial, because we could not run this city without them. And these programs that we need to get involved in, that we need to introduce, to reach out to all the people in our community. And I would like to say, how many people in here that does not have someone in their family or somebody they know that's not on drugs? How many can raise their hands and say that? Alcohol's a drug, dear. No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. How many can say that? That is the problem we're facing, and we still haven't grasped it yet. We need to. Thank you.
Okay. The next three questions are all kind of unique, and I like them, so I'm going to bulk them together. And I think we start with, who do we start with this time? I forgot who started that. You? Okay, Mayor Gahan. How would you use your strongest quality to advance your vision of the city? And then there's a part 2 and 3 to them. So we'll do that part first, and then I'll ask the other two.
My strongest quality to advance my agenda on the city.
Your strongest quality to advance your vision for the city.
Okay. I think what I do best is listen to a lot of people, a lot of them. I listen a lot to our city council. I listen a lot to our redevelopment commission. I listen a lot to our directors. Listen a lot to neighbors. Listen a lot to employers. Listen a lot to folks in the ministry. I listen a lot to folks that are raising kids. I listen a lot to educators who are doing a great job, educating our kids. So I think when you listen to enough people, when you start trying to figure out what is the repeating message, what keeps coming to the surface, that's what I think my strongest quality is. And we do have a lot of great people in New Albany. I will tell you that we're really fortunate. We have a lot of folks that step up and they don't mind telling what they think, right? And I think that's a good thing. But I think that's what we do, and not just myself. I think I've tried to push that down to our other directors. I think they're out there listening all the time. How can we improve? How can we be better? What's on people's mind? And how can we make New Albany the best it can be? And that's how we work.
In your time in public service, what are the top 3 things you've done to make New Albany a better place? Your pick.
Top 3 things. Okay. One is I'll repeat that. I think I've done a pretty good job trying to be as in touch with as many people as I possibly can and listening to their concerns. So I think I've done a pretty good job of that. And then imparting that on some of the folks that we need to get things done. Say, hey, look, this is the direction we need to go. This is what I'm hearing. And I think I've got a lot of support moving forward. And, like I said earlier, we had a whole lot of big list of infrastructure improvements and parks. And you don't do those things unless you have a lot of people working together. Those things just don't happen. I can tell you, I've lived here my entire life, and we've experienced a lot of really great things in a short period of time. It's not all me, but it is a lot to do with how we're listening to people, and how we're approaching people, and how we're getting behind things that other people want, not just me. So I think that's kind of what I am. I think those are the two. And the other thing, the third one would be we spent a lot of time and effort deciphering what we're going to do next, and I'm very happy with the completion of the projects. Lots of time and effort and capital and political capital are spent moving the city forward. You'd hate to end up with a project that, people didn't like or it wasn't satisfactory. Most of the things that we've done, they're pretty quality. I'm very proud of the quality that we've been able to deliver and the timeliness of all the improvements. So that's what I'd say.
And the last part of that you pretty much answered, but it's as a leader in our community, what have you done to invest in infrastructure? And you pretty much addressed that, but maybe some of the projects?
Just individuals. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we've across the board. I mean, it's kind of funny. Of all the things we've done, I'm pretty proud of what we've done in the heavy-duty infrastructure, the flood control, and making this. We can take a whole lot of water now with the pumps been improved, and now we got backup power. I'm pretty proud of that. I mean, I'm very proud of the fact that when we get a lot of rain, we're not going to have a lot of wastes coming out of the manholes. And we have a lot of cool things going on, a lot of jobs here. The downtown's resurging, the parks are cool, but some of that heavy-duty stuff, I'm really proud of it. And I think those are the kind of projects that make a whole lot of people feel safe and comfortable, and glad they're a part of being here in New Albany.
Mr. Coffey?
You're going to have to repeat some questions.
How would you use your strongest quality to advance your vision for the city?
I really believe I believe it is a quality. Strongest one is how much I care about people. I'm talking about all people. Then I believe in networking. The one thing about it is one person doesn't have all the answers, but there's people out there that know how to do it. And you'll be surprised. All you have to do is ask them, question them, what do you think? And don't ever be afraid to say something, to somebody, because if you do this for a living, if you live in this area or whatever it may be, I promise you're going to know more about it than that person that's sitting in that office. It's just a fact of life. So I'm going to say it'd be twofold: the fact how much I care for our people, and then the networking.
And then, as a leader in the community, what have you done to invest in infrastructure?
Well, number one, and I guarantee Jeff will both tell you that's a tough question. It's tough because it's not what we've done. We've done as a group of people. Without the right people, without the right leadership, it wouldn't happen. I can tell you this right here was a fight. I'm not sure exactly how many votes passed it on the council, but I will tell you there was some real arm twisting. And I will tell you, a lot of people didn't want it because where it was at. The location of where it was going to be. Unfortunately, some of the less affluent areas are overlooked, and often. And I think some of that, though, goes back on them because they don't speak up. They don't speak up. You got to come to things like this here and say, hey, we want to be a part of it. We're here. I've never been one to sit there and say, I did this. It's always a group of people. It's the people themselves. Look, you go out there, unfortunately, my name is on that plaque. I think it's only on 2 plaques in this city. I don't want my name on a plaque. You know why? We did it. The taxpayers did it. I just voted to spend your money. That was it. So I don't need my name on a plaque. But that pretty much answered it.
And then the last thing is, what are the top 3 things you've done to make New Albany a better place?
You know, this is a few years back, and it didn't get much press coverage. But there was, I want to say it was around 2014, 2015. They came to us, it might even be before that. They came to us wanting to change the hiring process of the fire department. Now, I'll tell you what would have happened had this happened. Most of our children wouldn't have got on that fire department because they didn't come from the right side of the track. That's the bottom line. The deal was they were going to put more emphasis on the written test, which, by the way, certain people's children had a copy of those tests, and less emphasis on the physical part. And it's funny because if you didn't pass the physical, you could stop right there and come back the next day and pick it back up, next day and pick it back up, and the next day and pick it up. And that was going to go through. That was going to go through. That would have been very hazardous for the rest of us and unfair for our children because they wouldn't have the chance to, you know, get a job. The bottom line is you work for the city now, it's not bad. You know, there's a lot of white-collar jobs or blue-collar jobs there that are white-collar pay. And unfortunately, they're going to family or friends. And those are the type of jobs that make a difference in people's lives. Thank you. I didn't know you had that there. You know, another thing that we did, and this actually wasn't through government, but along with my wife and some others and the Sisters of Providence, we started a program in the West End, and it helped people get their medication. And the other thing it did, it got them a GED. And we were so successful, guess what? It went away. Because everybody that wanted a GED needed it, and everybody that needed their drugs, there was another program that came in after that and took care of it. So there's other ways to be successful without just being in politics. Thank you.
And then lastly, Mr. Seabrook, do you need me to repeat the question for you too?
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay.
How would you use your strongest quality to advance your vision for the city?
Well, I think my strongest quality is being a people person. I like to listen to people. I like to hear their opinions. In my profession, I dealt with families from all the way from Gap Hollow Road all the way to the county line the other way. And so I've been through many, many families and seen how they live and what their problems are and knew what their struggles were. And I think that always winds up in my mind about making decisions. It's not just about buildings, or it's not just about how many more jobs can we bring in here, which is necessary. But there is, like I said very early in my presentation, there's a mediation in there, or a middle part, where we need to make sure, do we spend more money to bring businesses in here, or do we spend more money to work on the addiction? Who makes those decisions and how? I think that's very important. And I think I bring leadership and progressive thoughts about those things because I have no predetermined opinions. And what I want is for the good of the city and for the good of those people that need our help. Somebody behind me?
Yes. No, I'm sorry. I was listening to the radio and trying to look to where it was. As a leader in our community, what have you done to invest in infrastructure?
Well, that's a good question. Since you sit in our community, I served on city council for 3 terms. So city council, other than some paving and things like that, but also served on the sewer board during a very, very troubling time. I made trips to Chicago with that sewer board, talked to the EPA, tried to get some consent decrees occurred on and agreed upon, and pretty much calmed things down for a while until somebody could get a grip on it. And I'm very proud of that. So that's probably my biggest infrastructure thing as far as I was in no position to make decisions about building businesses or parks or anything like that.
And what are the top 3 things you've done to make New Albany a better place?
Well, the first thing that I'm, if you will, proud of, when they say what I've done, again, it wasn't what I did, it was former mayor had a vision of putting a YMCA downtown. Very controversial. And Mr. Coffey will tell you, he was there then, that there was a lot of bickering and fighting about whether the city was going to commit 250,000 man or something like that a year. 255,000 Okay. So anyhow, when the vote came up, I'm not going to say I was a deciding vote, but I was one of them that voted for it. And whether anybody wants to admit it, that's an anchor downtown. That's where it all started. And then you've got investors like the Reshes and the Chalfonts and all those people. They put their money and their hearts and their souls into downtown. And, you know, they should get a lot of credit for all the work they've done and how they've made New Albany look better. Along with that same line, I was chairman of the Horseshoe Foundation for a long time. And one of the 2 greatest things that I ever got to do were give awards of $10,000 scholarships to kids that wouldn't have gone to college without them. And when they come back the next year and thank you for it, their parents, that's a big deal. That's a real big deal. And then all the organizations on the $25,000 grants, you know, putting the floor in a dance hall or whatever. I'm talking about Georgetown or in the city limits, a lot of things. We bought police equipment one time for the rings down there, out of money for that. So I am proud of what I was able to do with those 3 things, and just being around to listen and try. The last one?
That was the last one.
That was the last one.
Now, it's 6:30, so there's a few more questions, but I wanted to hear from you 3. If you're done with an hour, or if you mind a few more questions. And how does the audience feel about that? Pardon? You're done? I'm sorry. Next group? Okay. They want a little bit of a break, and so I'll save some of those questions because they could easily be asked of city council member candidates as well. Thank you. You did a great job in respecting each other, and I thank you for that. The council at large candidates, if you would take about, oh, wait a minute.
If New Albany clerk candidates could come up front.
Sorry.
All right, so we'll go ahead and get started with candidate introductions from the City of New Albany clerk candidates. We'll start with Kelly Frick.
Falk.
Falk. Okay. Turn it over to you, Kelly.
All right. Hello, my name is Kelly Falk, and I'm running for City Clerk for the City of New Albany. I want to begin by thanking the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight. I think this is an important service for our voters to be able to attend. I think it's a great honor that we're all here and we're able to speak to each other civilly and explain what we want to do for the city. Let me tell you a bit about my background. After graduating from New Albany High School, I went on to Ball State University, where I did a double major in public relations and photojournalism, receiving my Bachelor of Science degree. I say that because communication is a really important trait of mine. I think a few of you may have learned that about me in my past experience with the City of New Albany. I went on with 25 years of marketing and public relation experience, starting off with Greater Clark County Schools as their PR person, going on to the Kentucky Humane Society, working in nonprofit, and then the corporate environment of Anthem and Humana and corporate communications. There's another reason I bring that up, and I'll get back to that in just a few minutes. I've always believed in providing service to others and encourage everyone else to do the same, contributing your time, your talent, or your treasure. We need to help one another. My most recent contribution to our community was that of the Mount Tabor Road project. I have lived there for 16 years. It's been in my family, my house, for 71 years, and it dates back to the 1880s. It's important that you know the history because this house is extremely important to me. When we had the Mount Tabor Road project come up 6 years ago, actually 6 years ago this week on September 10th, which was my birthday, we had a public hearing. We were told that our land was going to be acquired through eminent domain. We had about 300 people there, and we voiced our concern about a roundabout. We said we do not want it. The neighborhood worked together, and we got through to Mayor Gahan, who came back to us later and said, okay, we're not going to do a roundabout, we're going to have a four-way stop. We were relieved, and a few years went by. Then go back maybe 2 to 3 years ago, and the eminent domain began. And the mediators came through, and they tried to acquire our land from us. At that point, we received paperwork that said the plans are preliminary, not final. And although we don't have final plans, we want you to negotiate. And we refused. So the 40-something residents put our foot in the ground and said no. 20 of us went ahead with a lawsuit. We went to court, and a lot of them are still pending right now. Because of our efforts, we were able to put a stop to the intersection development as well as to the eastern side of Mount Tabor Road. I had my neighbors work together with me. We had an engineer, we had business owners, we have myself as communication person, and together we were able to accomplish this. This is because we care about our land, because we care about our city. As somebody who's grown up in New Albany most of my life, outside of college, I care that my home will be the same 50 years from now as it was 50 years ago when my dad was living there. This experience made me realize a lack of transparency in New Albany, and that is the cornerstone of my campaign. Plans should not be kept from the citizens, nor should the minutes of public meetings. Citizens should have access to the same information available to all the elected officials. And I will make sure that happens, starting with the posting of minutes of all public meetings, as well as the supporting documents that go with it. Nothing is going to be buried under my watch. Transparency is key to both open and honest communication, as well as accountability. And speaking of accountability, I hold myself to very high standards, and I do expect that of everybody around me. You can count on me to do my job in a timely and detail-oriented manner. I look forward to living in a city that provides professional service to its citizens. We should be helpful, polite, and working together as a team. City government should not be any different than the Fortune 500 companies where I have worked. This is why I mentioned Humana. Being in corporate communications, I do understand customer service and communication. We should be known for exceptional customer service, and that is to you, our residents. Transparency, accountability, and service. That is what I want our city to offer, and that is what I pledge to bring to the position of city clerk. You will find, I want to thank you for listening to me. I'm Kelly Falk, and I am running for city clerk on the Republican ticket.
Thanks, Kelly. Moving on to Vicki Glotzbach.
First of all, I want to thank everyone for allowing me to serve for the past 8 years as city clerk. My name is Vicki Glotzbach. I would like to continue to serve in this capacity. While being clerk, I have digitized the historical records for easier research and to preserve the historical books because they are very fragile. They are now stored off-site in a climate-controlled environment for their protection. I have also been a nonpartisan clerk dedicated to open access of records for everyone, and I will continue to be if reelected. I will continue to improve upon information that is available to the public via the New Albany City Clerk webpage on the City Clerk's on the City of New Albany's website. I have worked in close partnership with the city's administration and legal department to aid in resolving the difficulties in the collection of unpaid ordinance violation citations and will continue to do so. I will continue to assist citizens by acting as a liaison to the proper departments to assist with any questions or concerns, as well as assisting citizens regarding ordinances on code and records. I will continue to work hard to serve my community and hope to have your support. Thank you.
There were no questions submitted. Does anyone have any right now for the 2 women running for clerk? Any questions? Thank you, ladies, very much.
And now if we can have the council member at large candidates come up. All right, we'll go ahead and start with introductions with David Abersold.
That's close. It's all right. I appreciate all of you coming tonight. My name is David Abersold. For you, those that do not know me, been to a flower shop on the Silver Street. My grandfather started 111 years ago, so I'm the 3rd generation. My daughter's with us 4 generations. Went to New Albany High School, graduated a long time ago. Went to Indiana University, got a degree in business management administration. Been married almost 53 years, 3 children, 4 grandchildren, and happily married. I've been on the council 3.5 years. I really appreciate being on there. I have heard many times that this council this past 3 years has been one that gets along very well together, and I really believe that. I got friends with all of them on there. We have a lot in common. We try to work together a lot and get things done for the city. We try to get things done for you. One thing that I have always looked out for and consider is your tax dollars. It's your money, not mine. I try to make judgments on what we're going to do, what we vote on how I've been brought up over the years, how I run my business. Sometimes it might be a little bit different using tax dollars versus a private individual. But I try to look at it that way and consider what I would do with this particular project, how I would do it. Is there other projects that would need to be done more so than this project we're looking at? I try to look at a lot of those things and make a judgment and vote on it, considering what I've been through. I hope to be reelected again. I would appreciate your vote, and again, thank you all for coming out, and thank you all for having us here tonight.
David Barksdale.
Yes. I'm Dave Barksdale. I'm one of your current New Albany City Councilmen at large. I do have a lot of notes here. If I wouldn't have the notes in front of me, no telling which direction I might go. So I apologize for having to look down here, but to keep it as timely as possible, I need to check on my notes here. I do know that I was born and raised in New Albany, Indiana. Graduated from New Albany High School in 1971. Graduated from Indiana University Southeast in 1975 with a bachelor's and master's in elementary education. I'm a retired public school educator of 36 years. Been married 43 years, Dave, to the same person. Yeah, you've got me on that one. To the former Debbie Schuler. Together we have 2 adult children and 5 wonderful grandchildren. I attend St. Mary's Roman Catholic Church with my wife, who's a member there. We also attend St. Mark's United Church of Christ, where I'm a member. I've been involved in numerous organizations throughout the years. My present involvement has included being the state-appointed Floyd County historian, president of the Floyd County Historical Society, and most recently the New Albany City Council appointee to the New Albany Redevelopment Commission, the Tree Board, the Urban Enterprise Association, and the Historic Preservation Commission. Some of my accomplishments as your councilman at large: I supported the appropriation for funds for the Homeless Coalition of Southern Indiana, Blessings in a Backpack, and Haven House. I co-sponsored a resolution supporting the New Albany Floyd County School referendum. I co-sponsored an ordinance prohibiting litter within the city of New Albany and also an amendment to the noise control ordinance. I sponsored an ordinance for appropriation of tree plantings within the city. I voted for the resolution of the adoption of a hate crimes law by the state of Indiana. And last month, co-sponsored with my good friend Al Knable, to amend an ordinance regarding unreasonable noise associated with fireworks. And finally, I sponsored the ordinance making it possible for the city offices to relocate from the current city-county building into the old Wright's Furniture building once restoration of the historic structure is complete. I want to continue looking into the future. I want to continue that revitalization of downtown New Albany that a lot of people have spoken about. It's amazing over the past 15 years what our downtown has turned into be. As numerous people said, the investment going on in the downtown. I want to keep that momentum going. And just as Mr. Seabrook said about healthy neighborhoods, definitely we want to build those healthy neighborhoods. In fact, I really believe a healthy neighborhood has a healthy neighborhood association. And I want to point one out. The East Spring Street Neighborhood Association is one of the strongest ones in the city. And I think that would be an avenue we would maybe want to try to get the residents of these neighborhoods to go down. I want to focus on distressed and forgotten commercial districts. There are several other commercial districts in New Albany besides the downtown that needs the city's attention. Uptown, the Vincennes Street corridor, which there's a lot of excitement right now already going on in that corridor. Near North New Albany, the Charlestown Road area, and certain sections of Grant Line Road and State Street. They're all areas of concern for its citizens. But with much public input, and I stress public input, creative planning, and city involvement, these once neglected sections of New Albany should be able to be revitalized, further aiding the growth of our city. And lastly, definitely be a business-friendly environment. Attracting new businesses and industry to the city is very important but also retaining the established ones and helping those that have already been here for many years. It's going to be crucial to our city's progress. In closing, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum, and I'm once again asking for your continued support in the upcoming November 5th election. Thank you.
Al Knable.
Thank you. Like Mr. Barksdale said, thank you to the League of Women Voters for having this tonight and hosting. And thanks for a nice crowd coming out as well. And you really should be proud of yourselves. This is just like Congress. Most of the Republicans ended up on the right side of the aisle and most of the Democrats on the left. And Mr. Blair, the independent, is sitting in the center, leaning slightly to the right. So it's very good, true to form. So again, I'm Al Knable. I was born and raised in New Albany. My wife Jessica's over here in the corner. We have 4 children, a couple out of the home, a couple still at home, probably having a party as we speak maybe. I don't know what time we told them we'd be home, but I graduated from New Albany High School, Purdue University, medical school degree at IU, and then I'm a proud veteran of the United States Air Force as well. When I ran in 2015, I promised to work hard. My wife will attest to the fact that I have a lot of 14, 15, 16-hour days between the council job and my 2 other jobs, but I love it. I've got a rule where I try not to take any work into the house. So I've got a bench out by the garage. The neighbors sometimes see me sitting out there, but I'm on my phone doing that. But my home is my sanctuary, so I try to do the work sometimes in the garage in the wintertime. When I ran, I said that I wanted to make New Albany a better place to live. Some of the first actions that I took that I'm really very proud of, I helped to rewrite the litter ordinance, to rewrite the noise ordinance. We also simplified, I think, the rental registry that was going to go into place, one of our first actions on that as well. And, one of the things that I really want to push for in 2020 and beyond is the River Heritage Conservancy. New Albany really doesn't have a representative at that table right now. I think that could be a generational gem for the area, and I really want the city to be involved in that. I promise that we would be more responsive. To my knowledge, I have answered every phone call from constituents, every text, every tweet, every email. I've not always given people the answer they want, but I have tried to do that and to listen, because I find through that listening you really get great ideas for the community. And that's happened multiple times with the legislation that we brought up. Mr. Barksdale mentioned the fireworks thing. Okay, we floated it, we passed it. It didn't get passed. We tried on that, and that comes from listening. What we've done most recently that I'm very proud of is our resolution to try to keep the bridge open as long as possible during construction. That came from listening to not only businesses, but also to the blue-collar workers who have to go back and forth, to people really from the county as well. And I want to mention the fact that it doesn't stop with a resolution. There's so much work that goes on behind the scenes. I want to riff for a minute on one of the questions the mayor's asked, which is, what would you do? I mean, we're doing it. I've already talked to the county. I think you're going to see them pass a similar resolution in the near future. I've reached out to state representatives and federal representatives as well. And I'm not going to stop until we get people down here to listen to us. My hope is to have the NDOT commissioner down here himself. Stay tuned on that. For 2020 and beyond, I really would like to see us get more engaged with an acknowledgement of the homeless situation and work with established agencies. But it starts with the city acknowledging the issue and getting together, I think, more prominently in a more connected way with people who have boots on the ground. I promise to be more inclusive. I think I've done that on multiple fronts. Some examples of that: in 2018, I was the council president. I named a youth liaison to the council, and I spoke a couple times at New Albany High School to the city council on that. I helped alter the structure of our meetings to make it easier for there to be public input so that folks didn't have to necessarily sign up for a specific subject to talk about before a meeting. I'm really most proud of a couple of things we did with that, with revitalizing the Human Rights Commission, which had fallen into some disuse or stagnation. We've revitalized that, and then I authored the hate crimes resolution that we were able to get passed 9-0 and placed on the governor's desk. It helped get some legislation across. I don't think it was perfect legislation, but it was certainly, I think, better than it would have, and I know the governor was happy to have New Albany's support on that. Inclusion in 2020 and beyond, I plan to stay involved in the community. We all do that in so many aspects, council meetings. I like to drop by the fire stations. I like to drop by the schools. I like to go to the civic meetings. I've spoken at several of the schools, not only the high school, but I've also spoken at elementary schools. And recently, I talked to a pre-K class. I really enjoyed that. It's the same message that I give everywhere that I talk. And the message is that you are the government. You know, we are the government. We are representatives, but everyone in here is the government. I mean, we work for you. And if you don't feel that way, if it doesn't feel like we work for you, when you talk to your councilman or your other elected officials, vote us out and get somebody in that will listen and will talk and will respond to you. Because really, that's the prerequisite for the job, is we pick up the phone, we listen, and we respond. So I'm going to continue to do that. So again, in closing, I do not represent the council. I represent you. As Mr. Abersold said, we're very mindful of the tax dollar. It's your money we're spending, or stewarding, I should say. I'd be happy not to spend some of it, you know. And I'm going to keep listening, keep engaging, and keep working for you. And if we don't take...
Jason Applegate.
Hi, I'm Jason Applegate, running for candidate for City Council at large. I grew up here, not too far away from here, just around the block at Sheffield Square Apartments. I grew up working on the golf course, and I worked there so I could play there. That enabled me to get through I graduated from New Albany in 1995. And that it gave me the opportunity to get a golf scholarship over at the University of Louisville. After that, I did move away. I lived in Indianapolis for a while, and then out in New Mexico, and then from there, a little bit about me, a little personal. A tragedy actually brought me home. I was married, and I had wife in 2010. She passed away. So when I came back home, the people around in New Albany, they really grabbed their hands around me, and that meant a lot to me. And you realize what home is. So that's what I did. I stayed and have worked hard. And then since then, I've remarried to a wonderful individual. And now we have started a business, a magazine here in Southern Indiana that is about celebrating Southern Indiana. So what we chose to do is bring the best out of the area and push it out to the communities from here to Jasper, to Madison, to Scottsburg, Louisville, and Prospect, to show what Southern Indiana, New Albany is where our home is, and what this area is about. I take a lot of pride in New Albany, one, because I'm from here. Now we have our business located in New Albany, and now we're raising our 4-year-old daughter, or soon-to-be 4-year-old daughter here in New Albany. I've seen New Albany go through some good times and some bad times. Right now, we're on one of those good times. So with that, we have to continue that going forward. We've got to look at the things that are going around the country, going around the region. A lot of that stuff is with people wanting to relocate to the city, and then wanting to shop and support local and our local businesses. So I'm a huge advocate for that. And then beyond that, since we are an older city and that we are getting an influx of people that is moving to our city, what we have to do is we have to take advantage of that. We don't have too many opportunities in this world to be able to take advantage of those situations. To do that, it's going to be through a lot of redevelopment, revitalizations. It's going to be through restoring properties. It's going to be through repurposing. It's going to be not always through a brand new development. And especially, it's not going to be taking some land that's never been developed and then developing it. We just don't have that. So what we have to do is we've got to continue, and we've got to put a lot of money, or not a lot, but we just have to continue the support of our infrastructure. We've got to make sure our water. We've got to make sure our sewer. We've got to make sure that we have affordable housing. We've got to make sure that our roads look good. We've got to be able to keep our parks up, and because that brings in a lot of people into the city, because when you have good parks as a city, you have somewhere for people to go to. Secondly, what we have to do, well, after that, we've got to also make sure that we have our first responders taken care of, and give them the stuff that they need to do their job to protect all of us. Secondly, what we've got to do is we've got to look at the blighted areas around towns. We've got to look at those areas, and we've got to have creative ways to fix those areas. And it's not always just about throwing money at it. And as some people up here have said, it's different than maybe a small business or something that you do look at it from your standpoint. But you also have to realize that sometimes you've got to spend a little money to make that area better, to bring in additional monies, the tips that we're talking earlier, and different things there. So we've got to protect and we've got to do those things. But being creative and being able to solve those problems and make those things happen, those are things that I do every day in a small business to survive, especially with us being a startup and just getting to our 5-year mark. So we're pretty proud, and I think that's a big deal to make that stuff, to make that happen. Lastly, what we have to do is we have to support our youth. We have one of the greatest school systems in the country. We also have one of the greatest school systems definitely around the area, and we've got to protect them. Along with that, we have to make sure that there's higher paying jobs for when they get out of school so they can stay and then keep that support coming into our area. I appreciate the League of Women Voters. I also appreciate everybody coming out here. Thanks to all the candidates for being here, and it's a pleasure either to work with you or run against you all. So thank you very much, and have a good evening.
Sam Charbonneau.
Thank you. Not too many people get that last name correct, but I appreciate that. Thank you to the women of Southern Indiana South Central League of Women Voters for having us tonight. Deeply appreciate that. My name is Sam Charbonneau. You guys may recognize me. I ran for state rep last year. It was a clean race, I thought, and deeply learned a lot and appreciated my opponent not going negative, and that's what New Albany is about. A couple things about myself. I grew up in Uptown. I grew up in Bicknell Park. Back then, if you grew up in Bicknell Park, during the summers, you got fed by the Parks Department. And that's something I really look forward to, is getting fed for the Parks Department during the summer. And that's something that the community gave back to me. And I took that on. I was a child. I'm a son of a veteran. My dad recently passed away. But we had a one-family income growing up in Bicknell Park in Uptown. And we had tennis courts back then. So we learned a lot about community. We learned a lot about neighborhoods and how we took care of one another. And then during the summers, I went down on a farm and worked on my grandparents' farm. Okay, there was one thing that I want to share about this, and it's a quick story. My grandfather used to tell me, don't come home, don't come in the house until every cow is in the fence. Now, I knew not to come back. I absolutely knew, or I wasn't going to get fed, okay, or I was going to get a stern lecture. But the story and the lesson that he's taught me is every piece of livestock is an investment. And that was just for livestock. The same goes for New Albany residents. Every resident in New Albany is our investment. Now, I've been working for the Department of Child Services in the leadership position for the past 8 years here in New Albany, and 18 years total. In addition to that, I went to St. Mary's downtown school, and I worked for the late Sister Barbara Zeller. Now, I don't know if anybody's worked for the Sisters of Providence before, but they have a hard work ethic, and they will watch every penny. So I'm going to tell you, I learned budgeting. I learned how to create a yearly budget for every penny. And if every penny was missing, or if I was one dot off, I can guarantee you I was in Sister Barbara's office explaining myself on why I made a mistake. So I've learned a lot from leadership from the Sisters of Providence throughout my life, as well as my father, my grandparents, and everybody here. Neighbors talk to me. I want to talk about the level of commitment. Everybody wants to know, what's your platform? I'll go around, what's your platform, Sam? And I'll tell them, instead of that, I want to give you a commitment. okay? I'll give you 3 catalyst events that happened in my life that made me run for politics. The first one is support public education and public teachers. Okay, my wife is a public educator. She's a school teacher. She's taught at Mount Tabor, several other schools. She's now at Floyd Central. And the way the teachers were getting treated, the pay, and again, the referendum of how New Albany took care of their schools, how this city purchased and helped pay for those schools. That's something so she kept complaining and complaining every night. In addition to that, the opiate crisis. We heard about that earlier. It devastated the Department of Child Services. The amount of children that we went into foster care, unfortunately, increased dramatically. One day, I had to go to a funeral of a mother that passed away from overdose. And that was tough, because I knew the children. However, when I went to the funeral home, it was packed. It was packed. Lines coming out. Where were all these people when the issue was being presented? Then more and more overdoses, more and more trips to the funeral homes. I got angry. And as most people know, when I kind of get angry, I kind of get relentless, and I have to fight for things to get done. The third event, taking care of my kids. This community took care of my kids, took care of me when I was a kid, and my focus is on taking care of children. And here's my level of commitments to each and every one of you why I'm going to run. I'm going to commit to you right now that 2,000 residents are going to hear from me every year, door to door, individually, and I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to take that back. 2,000 residents. Not during the campaign year, but every year you're going to see my face at your door, and I'm going to listen to you, and I'm going to take that back to the council. Second commitment, take care of our firefighters and our police officers. Got to take care of those guys. They take care of us. They need the resources. They need the money for the resources. Let's find the money and get it to them. Third, this is Child Welfare Workers Week. Now, I work with some amazing people. We deal with secondary trauma every day, okay? I see the worst in our community, and yet I see the best on what we can do for our community. This community takes care of our children, takes care of their families. We have multiple organizations that do that. I can attest to that. Afterwards, if you want to talk to me about that, I'll be more than happy to do that. Another commitment I want to tell you about, support public educators. Yes, we are leaders. I mean, we may only be city council members, but we are leaders. Let's step up. Let's be leaders throughout the state. Let's talk about teachers. Let's talk about the opioid crisis. Let's talk about the abandoned and vacant housing that we have. Let's get the money to take care of all the abandoned and vacant housing at the West End and in Uptown and create a revitalization in those areas. I deeply appreciate your support, and I really want your vote coming out. Thank you very much.
Christina Estel.
Thank you very much. And that was the correct pronunciation of my last name. Thank you all very much for having this event. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you, New Albany neighbors, for coming out and listening to all of us candidates, for all the hard work that we're putting in during this year. I am Christina Estel. I am a single mother of 3 sons. It has not been an easy task. And let me state that I moved to New Albany 10 years ago to escape an abusive relationship. If it was not for the partnering agencies in this community and the wonderful opportunities and the neighbors here in New Albany, I would not be thriving the way that I am. When I moved here, I was broken. But as soon as I landed in New Albany Housing Authority, there were programs, there were opportunities. The neighbors, when I got a job at Swifty gas station, pumping gas, they uplifted me, they challenged me, and they pushed me. And I enjoyed every moment that I had to meet a neighbor on that gas station lot. Because I was able to not only have them invest in me, but I was able to invest in them and give them a smile no matter how they were feeling that day. And that only motivated me more, because at the time I was only making 9 something an hour. And with the support of the programs
and the agencies in this community, I was able to go back to school full-time, work a full-time job, raise my 3 children, and obtain 2 bachelor degrees, one in social work, one in psychology, from Spalding University. I say this because the struggle was more than hard, more than difficult. And because I could maintain a 3.67, trying to balance my schedule, my hardships, my work ethic showed up. And it has never went away since I graduated college in 2014. Currently, I work 50 hours a week in a social service agency here in Southern Indiana, and I am constantly connecting and partnering with agencies throughout Southern Indiana, making sure that our most vulnerable populations are being served and heard and connected. What I will do if I'm elected is I will advocate for sensible ordinances that are achievable, that are obtainable, and that are specific for our neighbors, for our families, and for our communities. I will make sure that there are sustainable development throughout our neighborhoods and throughout this city. And that when you have a concern and when you feel like you are not being heard, I am that person that I can definitely advocate on your behalf. It's what I do every day. Through my service work, conflict resolution is very important. And we must learn how to have somebody be that voice, no matter how frustrating things can get. So I'm able to put that personal touch on your voice and be able to get your message relayed in a manner that things will be done on your behalf. I can guarantee you. One of the biggest points that I like to make is that here in our city government, we have very little representation of diversity and inclusion. I want to show you that we need that. We need a woman's touch on the city council. We need women to be represented. We need people of color. We need people that are living in our communities and that understand what it's like to live from paycheck to paycheck and have to deal with real life issues on our city council, because they understand the real perspective of what it's like to walk out on your front porch and see the addicts walking down the street. Creating safety in our neighborhoods is very important, and I've heard many concerns throughout this city, and I am that person that will advocate for that as well. I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your opportunity for being here, and I look forward to having your vote in November. Thank you.
I've got a few questions, and I think we're just going to go down the line. We'll start with you, Dr. Knabel, and we will go down to you, and then we'll just rotate, just like we did with the other gentleman on who was first. This one is basically a statement wrapped up in a question. I'm concerned about how the new city hall will be paid for. I'd appreciate direct answers as to if taxes will be increased and when will it be finished.
Okay. I was hoping or thinking that maybe you were going to ask something along the lines of what was my greatest failure on the council, and I will tell you that my greatest failure was not getting an additional vote to not pass that particular development. Having said that, it did pass, and I wrote a letter in the Tribune the day afterwards saying that I was going to not throw obstacles in the way and try to work to make that done. It is a concern. I have no idea what the timetable is on that. I go down by that daily. I'm not privy to the information with regards to that. I've been told that they are still looking for a January 1 date of 2020. As far as payment goes, the financing on that, I'm concerned as well because the project's been estimated anywhere between $8 and $10 million, and the ongoing price of it is, of course, not having that on the tax roll. So it was budgeted for in a manner where money is budgeted for it. I would have rather seen that money go to infrastructure myself, but it's there and it's budgeted. We'll see. Budgets in a way are projections, so we hope that those projections are accurate. And if they prove not to be accurate, then we will have to find the funds, to do that. It will take the opportunity cost may be ongoing with that. But having said that, I hope that it's a beautiful building, and I hope that when it's done, it will be something that the citizens can be proud of. And my hope is that at the end of the day, we can provide a more efficient product. I'd love to see a concierge government where you can make an appointment for your needs and have somebody meet you down there. We might need that for valet parking as well. But it's budgeted. If the budget projections come through, hallelujah. If not, we will be working diligently to find the money.
Thank you, Dr. Knable. And of course, I voted for that project. Of course, it was a restoration project of a historic building. Looking at the numbers, it was about $8 million. And if you look over the course of a number of years from 1961 to present day, we haven't actually been paying rent in the city-county building. We have been paying, I don't know, if I say rent, dang, Mr. Coffey will have a fit. But anyway, we have been paying money every year since 1961, and actually nothing to show for it. So over a course of 15 years, that building should be the City of New Albany's property. And as far as the end date, the construction date, as with Dr. Knable, I have no idea. I pass that 2 or 3 times a day, and January 1 looks awfully progressive for that end date. But like I said, I have no idea what that date is.
I'm one that voted against it. I looked at it from maybe a different perspective than some others did. It's an older building. We have many developers in our community. I figured if it was going to be developed into an apartment complex, a business complex, stores underneath or whatever, they would have picked it up. They would have gone with it like they have a lot of other stores and properties in downtown New Albany. They didn't do it because, I don't know the real reason. You could surmise that it might have been, it cost too much to begin with. It probably cost too much to redo, to repurpose it for what they wanted to do. And being businessmen, it's not going to be profitable for them. So that's why it was never picked up for quite a few years. When the city came along with it first time, and I heard about it, sounds like a good idea, so forth and so on. But the more we got into it and I received more information, I was not for it. I think the city has other properties that are not being used, like the parking lot down at State and Pearl. You can imagine maybe what if the city developed their own building, put $3 or $4 or $5 million into a brand new building, build it the way you want, it's brand new, and go with that. That's what I would have liked to have seen done. It isn't done. It was voted the other way. We're in the midst of a project of doing it, and I look at it as, okay, we're going to go with it. So we got to go with what we have. So we're going to move along with it. We'll pay for it, however, throughout those few years. whatever it amounts to, 7, 8, 9, $10 million. We're going to pay for it. We're going to make it work. Okay, so everybody needs to be on board. It's over and done with. It's voted on. It's being built. Time-wise, I've heard that maybe the first of the year, but they've got a lot of work to do. In this kind of project, I don't like to see things rush and do it right. Okay, so if it takes till February, March, April, May, I don't care. That's fine. Get what we want out of it and have it done right.
Sam?
Barbara, can you ask the question one more time?
I'm concerned about how the new city hall will be paid for. I'd appreciate direct answers as to if taxes will be increased and when it'll be finished.
Well, as a candidate, I didn't have too much to do with that, to be honest with you. Regarding asking for taxes to pay for it, I want to trust the current administration and the promise that they made that they would handle that budget and they would pay for that. I think it's up to us, the future city council, to hold that accountable. I would say no to taxes for that building. And I think the city's done a good budget for the past 7 years. We probably could have had a little bit more input from last year on what building, where building, and so on and so forth. But my answer to new taxes is no, because we got bigger fish to fry in our community. And I trust the current administration to pay for that building, and I know they will.
Jason?
Hi, Jason Applegate here. Well, I like at the on the tax part about it, as Sam had mentioned, and different things about we didn't have anything to do through the process, but of course saw and had an eye to it. I'm gonna trust with our budget the numbers and that there won't be any tax increases on that. So that's kind of about that part. Now about the project in general, at the end of the day, we have an asset that when it's all done, it's all paid for. There's no cost that after we. It's the cost is all figured into the building process through the developer, and they pay for all of that stuff. So if something happens with the building and there's more construction cost, it doesn't fall on us. I don't think when you have that old of a building that is something that you don't that typically is a situation. It's what I kind of mentioned on that opening statement, that you've got to get creative to figure out a way to restore or revitalize those types of properties or those type of, let's say, community staples. There's a lot of those projects that have been done, especially for city halls. I know Salem did one around their circle. I've been in the building. It's nice. And it is the staple of that circle. Otherwise, the building wouldn't be there. Jeffersonville did the same thing with Quartermaster Station and the revitalization of that building as a staple. I think with New Albany not necessarily having that circle or that square, I think that that really does a good job with that project. And at the end of the deal, we won't know until after we have ownership. I can't remember exactly how many years down the road it is, 14 or somewhere around in that number or something, that we will know whether it was a good investment or not. But as we have it, it's an asset that we will always have. No different than, in essence, let's say the hospital, that was an investment or an asset forever, and when the county needed it, they had sold it. So, I think that we've got that on our books as an investment. So, from that standpoint, as long as tax dollars, don't have to be raised to pay for it, I think overall, it's going to be a sight to see and something special for our city to hold its hat on.
As far as the tax increase, I stand firmly on the sensible budgeting and sustainable development. The current city council has been reviewing their budget, and they've been very transparent in letting us know where they stand, and totally appreciate that there is some transparency there. But But again, we don't know what that will look like because the time hasn't come. But what I can tell you is if I'm sitting on that city council, I will make sure that we're very careful with not making sure there's tax increases. So we know we all are living to be sustainable. We're living not just to exist, but to create a much more livable city. And with looking to the future, I think we definitely need to consider, how that money is being spent and how development is being created through our city, and watching how future investments are being developed as well.
Okay, thank you. Who is the answer first? You want to go to the table? Okay. This will be the last question because I just got buzzed on time. How do you plan to keep redevelopment of our neighborhoods alive, and how did you or would you vote for the Colonial Manor resolution? So, why don't you start with that, and then we'll work our way back around, and this will be the last question for the council at large.
There was two parts of that question, correct?
Okay.
Repeat that.
How do you plan to keep redevelopment of our neighborhoods alive, and how did you or would you vote for the Colonial Manor resolution?
One thing that I've proposed regarding my commitments is developing work groups with our local universities. We have fantastic IUS, and then we have Purdue, and then of course we have Ivy Tech. Developing work groups with the professors, with the doctors, with the students out there on developing formulas, developing plans to how to revitalize our neighborhoods. One of those revitalizations is we have to get the money and incentives for people to purchase the abandoned vacant housing, revitalize them, rehab them, and make them affordable housing for our community. When you talk about the homeless in New Albany, go to West End and go to Uptown and see how many abandoned vacant housings that you see. And I guarantee you're going to see a lot, and they say a lot, that the people in those neighborhoods say a lot about those abandoned and vacant housings. Let's provide incentives. In addition to that, let's talk about rental inspections on those homes. We don't want slumlords purchasing those homes. Okay, we want rental inspections. So when you talk about revitalizing neighborhoods, let's eliminate all abandoned and vacant housings. It gives incentives to those people who want to purchase those. And if you say that, flip them, provide affordable housing, okay, and increase the value of everyone's home in that neighborhood. Now, regarding Colonial Manor, I think we missed that one. I think the leaders in every precinct and every council could have gone to that community way ahead of time and talked to the people and asked them what they wanted and explain all kind of options. And it's from my understanding, our leaders, a lot of people in that district did not know who their city council members were. They need to know who they are. They didn't know what's coming down the pipe. And it's our job to inform them of that and come up with what are their ideas. Let's present that. And if we want to sell it, let's sell it. And if they have any concerns, let's talk about that. Let's have the neighborhood support groups. Let's focus on those neighborhoods. Colonial Manor, I think we missed one on that. And the quick story is, the day after that vote, I was in Burger King, and every morning in Burger King or McDonald's, you'll see a group of men or women talking a lot. Now, and the focus on this topic the following day was, we missed one. What's going to happen to Colonial Manor now? It's going to continue to sit year after year after year, and nothing's going to happen to it. And so I went over, and of course I tried to campaign. My name's Sam Charbonneau, Democrat. Oh, we don't want to talk. And they were Republicans. It was a strong group of Republicans. And I did. I sat down with them and talked to them. I wanted to hear them. And they wanted something done with Colonial Manor. And that was a voice. That was a strong voice for me moving forward. So that's my answer. Let's get rid of the abandoned vacant housing, and let's inform our public on the big tickets coming down the pipe.
hi, Jason Applegate here. I think I've got the question. So the first one is about neighborhoods, if you would, about keeping that revitalizing. I think, I know we've got our paving programs that the streets and neighborhoods are all rated. I think a nice street where it is paved, I think that does make a big difference. That gives pride to the communities. We're updating the sidewalks as the city gets into those neighborhoods. Of course, with making sure that there are handicap accessible ramps and things. I think that does a great job for a neighborhood. I also think that we can do, I think we can make sure that when there are zoning or infractions on in neighborhoods, address those to where if somebody has a car or something that shouldn't be there, that we address those a little bit sooner if they are, or the ordinances say that they cannot be there, or neighborhood associations, things like that. That those just help the little bits of cleaning up the neighborhoods, giving people a lot more pride. I know we've been doing some, and I think Mr. Barksdale, he is on the tree board. I know that we've been adding trees to neighborhoods. And those type of things. I know that's an initiative which really help give that little bit of extra pride. I think if you have neighbors that move in, they take a little pride in their neighborhood, that the next one over. One of the things that my family really believes in is that you take care of your little piece of the world, and then that gets out to the corner, and then that corner gets a little bit bigger. And if you can take care of your own stuff, I think if we give everybody a little bit of pride, that just continues on out. For the neighborhood sides of things. The next thing is with Colonial Manor. I agree with, I think it was Sam that just had talked and mentioned. I do. I think we missed one there. Redevelopment Commission, they had a unanimous vote. I think whatever 9-1 or how many ever it is, 6 or 9-1, whatever the exact number is. That they had a unanimous vote that the TIF dollars could pay for it. We really need something for that area. There's a new business that just came in across the street. I worry about that business. I've seen so many over the years come and go because there's just not enough people that are using those facilities. I think that if we would have had that property ourselves, that we would have been able to, because there were stipulations that had community involvement. I think it was 2 or 3 or 4 sessions with the community that I think that those would have been more impactful because the community was already involved in that decision. The neighborhoods were already involved in that decision. I think that would have been a strong point, and that would have been a very nice opportunity to work together with the neighborhoods. It seemed like from the redevelopment side when they voted that was the intent, and for some reason that got switched around in the city council without the votes, not too many days later. And but I think that is one of those projects that can shape a neighborhood, and I do wish that would be in our hands versus whomever gets that property, whatever they want to do with it, when or where or how that happens, that's going to be on somebody else. So.
Hey, Christina Estel, running for City Council at Large. I will say I agree that Colonial Manor was a missed opportunity, but I know what it's like to get knocked down. But I have learned you take a hit, you get back up, you fight, and you fight for sustainable, fiscally responsible development. You work with the partners, your neighbors in the community. You take stewardship to a higher accountability, and you make sure that your neighbors and your community are being heard. You make yourself available to listen. You go out and you reach them, and you let them know that they're just as important. You learn how to bridge the gap for common sense solutions. Neighborhoods should be a part of the discussion. And yes, we should have groups. We should have neighbors working together that feel like they're unheard, and they should be able to have a representative who does listen. More so, we should, for the colonial manor. I think the biggest thing is, doing the corridor studies, making sure that our neighborhood can be sustainable is very important. So I would have definitely considered that if I had to vote on that as well. But I do want to say bridging the gap for common sense solutions for our neighbors and neighborhoods to thrive is the way that we need to go, and we need to make ourselves available for that.
Why don't we start in the middle with Mr. Barksdale?
The middleman. Let's talk Colonial Manor. And I agree, that's one that we missed. We were so very, very close. The Redevelopment Commission had approved that purchase. And then we heard from our constituents and the neighbors, and they were supportive of the project. But the neighbors wanted input. And after it was voted upon in the Redevelopment Commission, then it came to the council. And when it came to the council, before it came to the council, there were several items that we wanted in there. And one was a citizens advisory committee. We wanted to get neighbors' input in that project. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I had made a promise to those constituents of mine that, now I was on redevelopment and I voted for the project, but unless that Citizens Advisory Committee wasn't going to be part of it, I could not vote as a council member for that project. So I did vote against it. I agree, it's one we missed. We missed so closely. We just needed that coming together with the neighborhoods, talking about things, throwing out ideas, and coming to some type of consensus. We were close on that. Neighborhoods. With being on the Redevelopment Commission, Mr. Staten, myself, Mr. Stewart, several other of the members, we have been putting a lot of emphasis on the neighborhoods. The Redevelopment Commission has different tools in place that they can work and improve in these neighborhoods. Just recently, I believe we purchased, and I say we, the Redevelopment Commission, purchased 8 troubled properties up on Vincent Street, beginning to get rid of that blight in those areas. Now, I look at Vincent Street as that major corridor, but when you think about Vincent Street, Vincent Street's affecting the streets to the west, going down Oak, Culbertson, Eakin, etc., and they're also affecting it going to the east. It's almost like a cancer spreading from Vincent Street, both east and west. So we thought as a group we would purchase some of these properties. We have purchased them. We've seen some RFPs already come in for these projects. So we are putting a lot of emphasis on that major corridor that's also going to help those neighboring communities around the uptown area. Also in our toolbox, we have CDBG funding that we can put into certain neighborhoods. We had the UEZ, the Urban Enterprise Association. There's funding there in that district to help with projects. And of course, a lot of these areas are TIF districts, or designated TIF districts, so we can do improvements, infrastructure improvements in those neighborhoods. So the neighborhoods, I really think we're beginning to get involved with that and helping those neighborhoods out. The very last thing, and one of the gentlemen over here brought it up, was the rental registration that Dr. Knabel and I proposed. We sponsored it. It was passed. The landlord situation has sort of gotten out of hand in New Albany, and we need those landlords to be held accountable. And that was one of the reasons for this rental registration. The council was behind it. We said we will even fund money for another code enforcement officer to get this project going. In fact, I think in the budget this year, we still have a salary in there for another code enforcement. But if the codes aren't going to be enforced, it's going to hurt all of us. And we really, really have to really zero in, especially on enforcement. We have the tool now. Now we just need the follow-through with the enforcement.
I'll be short and succinct because we've got a lot of good people to hear from tonight. Keeping redevelopment alive, focus on neighborhoods, get money flowing out from downtown to there. We have a vibrant downtown, which is great. The heart is pumping. Let's get blood to the periphery. I floated an idea for an affordable housing trust fund in my first year, and I plan to revisit that. Strict uniform code enforcement so that you have desirable neighborhoods where people want to live and invest. Colonial Manor, yes, we did miss one. If you're a taxpayer, thank your stars that we missed that one. We missed getting fleeced on that one. That property was presented to the council significantly over the appraised value, and we would have taken a loss on that. That's not the way I do business. Buy low, sell high. It was significantly overassessed. So again, be thankful on that one. We did go out to the neighborhoods. We did listen to people. They were not represented in that final analysis of what they wanted there. I voted no on that. I would vote no on that again. I think we have better opportunities for there if we listen to the grassroots community folks and their vision for what they wanted in there. I would have been happy to support it if we had gotten a fair price on it.
I'll be quick. There's still a lot of people here. No. I think the repurposing a lot of property is a great idea, and I think the city needs to get behind those individual construction companies and so forth to do whatever we can to help them out. If the front of the property and the streets and gutters and sidewalk, that area needs to be done. It needs to be on a high priority list for the city to get it done. A lot of these construction companies are putting money into the community, going to build new houses, new duplex, new apartments, or whatever. The city needs to get behind them, even tax abatements. The empty property, the empty houses now probably bringing in very little tax money. So it's to the city's advantage to get developers to do something with this property so we can get extra tax dollars in, a lot more than what we're getting now. As far as the Colonial Manor goes, I voted against it. Like Dr. Knabel, it was way overpriced. It's not worth it. I looked at it at a business standpoint. I would not purchase that property for millions of dollars more than what it should be. It would be very tough to make some money out of that. It would have to be taken up somewhere, probably with new taxes. There were, and I have seen some proposals for that property, and it'd be great. There's a lot of different things, and they were really wonderful, and it could still be done, but you're going to have to, and the reason it hasn't been done probably are developers in our community would not go with it because it costs too much to start off with, and they're not going to make any money out of it, and that's why it's been sitting out there for a number of years.
Thank you very much. We want to thank you for your courtesy and the respectful discourse that we had. Thank you.